Hi, everybody. Carl DePrado, A to Z Business IT. I did this presentation today for my BNI chapter, and I wanted to share it out. First of all, not all of the members came today. It happens, a couple guys there, so I wanted to make sure they had it. And I also wanted to share it to the community as well. It got a lot. It seemed to get a lot of, it was well received. So we want to really talk about is how a cyber breach can lead to a total loss of trust in your business. Okay, so for those who don't know me, my name's Carl DePrado. I have over 30 years of experience in cybersecurity and information technology. I serve as a mentor to the ASCII community. I'm in an active membership with a partnership with the FBI. I'm also a trainer for continuing education in cybersecurity in New York State for realtors, and we're also starting to branch out, and we're doing a couple talks now for the Bar Association. And besides that, I'm also a husband and father of 2 kids, which is my greatest achievement. So, first question I wanted to ask you guys is, what do Uber, CNA Insurance, LastPass, PayPal, Intuit, MailChimp, T-Mobile, and the U.S. Post Office have in common? Well, to answer that, in the last 6 months, they've all had their customers' personal information stolen from them. So, my first question I'd ask you is, how does that make you feel? I mean, you trust these people with your data, and through negligence, malfeasance, or whether it was intentional or not, your data has now been stolen. It's been caught due to a crime, something you didn't have anything to do with, basically, besides trusting these people with your data. So how does that make, does that give you pause doing business with them? I mean, when you're you land in a new town, from your airport, and you're looking for, who am I going to use for my ride service? Am I going to use Uber, who's been breached twice and whose CIO went to jail? Or am I going to go with Lyft instead? Or maybe just grab a taxi, and not have to worry about my information being out there on the dark web. But even the more important question was, if you're upset now about this happening, imagine how you feel if your clients felt it was because of your fault, because of what your business did or failed to do to protect their data for you. So real quickly, there are 15 types of cyber threats that are in general categories. There's tons of sub threats, but these are the basic ways that come through: malware, web-based attacks, phishing, web applications, spam, DoD, denial of service, like that. It goes on, but these are the top 15 that go through here. But just to put it in perspective, right now, currently, cybercrime, online theft is a $6 trillion a year industry, and we're expecting it by 2025. The numbers are somewhere around $12 trillion. It's basically about 2% of the world's GDP is coming out through cybercrime, which is quite large. So what I wanted to talk about, first thing everybody talks about, is I'm too small to be hacked. Let me state this: you are not too small to get hacked. Let me say that again, because it's so important. You are not too small to get hacked. You're just probably too small to make the news. The truth of it, since we're talking, it's a $6 trillion industry, the news is only going to focus on the big stories. But what we find realistically is that the cyber criminals are focusing on the small mom and pop businesses. They're focusing on, individuals, retirees with a large nest egg. These are the people that they're focusing on because it's easy pickings. They don't have the sophistication or the wherewithal to survive a cyber attack. So, where are you going to spend your time on? Working on breaking into Fort Knox, or breaking into a small business where you might get, a couple $100,000 out of it. And so that's how the $6 trillion happens. It's not from the big hits. So what would you do if $100,000 was stolen from your account and your insurance company refused to pay? I have one of my partners out of Detroit, and he told me a story about a record store he was working with. He was called in. Basically, the attackers got into this basic retail record store. They only small 5-person company, and the attackers got in their systems. They knew what the busiest day of the year was for them. They also were able to know in their accounts how much money they had on hand in petty cash and so forth. And so they locked them out of their system on their busiest day of the year. and then they proceeded to extort them for $50,000. Now, the interesting part about this was this record store had a cyber insurance policy for $150,000, but they said we're not even going to pay any claims without what we call a forensic search or an incident response to come in. So that's another $50,000 on top of what was spent out. Now, you'd say, okay, well, the insurance company is going to, finance that. No, initially, they only gave them $5,000. And this doesn't even include the loss of time, business, their busiest day of the year. They were able to get everything back up. It took about a month. My friend, he said to him, if he'd come in talking about cybersecurity before this incident, would he have had any, interest or anything? And he would have said, I would have kicked him out of the store. But now it's a totally different game once he's unfortunately become a victim. Also, Travelers is in the middle of, they just filed a case in Illinois. They're looking to refuse payment on a policy because they signed the policy with the company in April. In May, they had the company filed a claim, and they Travelers went back into their questionnaire that they filled out, and they said, well, you really didn't fill out MFA quite the way we wanted. You said MFA is multi-factor authentication. And they said, well, this wasn't really applied correctly into the systems the way we wanted. So we are not going to pay your claim. And that's why they've taken them to court in this case. And I wouldn't be surprised to see more claims like this coming through, depending on how this one does. I wouldn't be surprised if it's coming through different states as anywhere. Long story short, just because you have cyber insurance, which I totally recommend that you have, that alone will not save you if, God forbid, you get breached. So what happens to a business when it experiences a digital robbery? I want you to notice one thing. I didn't call it a breach or a cyber attack or any other techno babble. I called it for what it is. It's a theft. It's just like being mugged or robbed. They don't have to use guns. That's all. You didn't get the joy of them coming in and making a personal visit to extract the money. What they did was they didn't have to do it. They did that in the comfort of their own homes, in their underwear, whatever. They did not need to do. So even though they use technology, the effect is the money came out of their businesses and their clients' money as well. So first thing that happens is it's a loss of revenue. Average breach, businesses explain that there's about almost 30% of businesses lose revenue. Of that, 40% of those people lost more than 20% of their annual income. We're going into a downward economy right this moment, and people are concerned about 5 or 10% loss in revenue. Imagine what happens if your business drops over 20%. It could be quite devastating. It would have a definite big impact. I mean, as much as we want our businesses, think of the years your business has grown 20% or more, what that's meant for you being able to do for your business to help your clients. So it can have just as an impact, just the same amount of impact, but in a negative way from this. So first thing we always want to talk about is damage to brand and reputation. It's going to affect more than just your short-term revenue. It's going to be whether people are going to trust you or not to do business with you. Think about it. Crime. A business that's located in a crime-ridden area is not going to get the same amount of business as a business that's in a nicer area. As a matter of fact, Starbucks, McDonald's, and Chase banks are all pulling their retail stores, and they're getting a lot of backlash in the communities, but out of places that they just don't feel it's safe for them to do business. And if your customers' data is taken, that's also going to have the same type of negative effect. People are just not going to want to do business. They're not going to be able to trust you. So obviously, the surface level costs are just the beginning. There are many hidden costs related to breaches as well. You also have to look at legal fees. You have to look at regulatory fines and investigations. The other part is you may be looking at closing the doors. The National Archives and Records Administration in DC put out a report in November saying 93% of companies that lost access to their data for 10 days or more filed for bankruptcy within a year, and almost 50% of those people that filed, they filed immediately. That was how devastating the attack was. So what can be done? So first thing you want to do, if you haven't done it, is you want to have a cyber security risk assessment. And what that is, it's really getting to know, the landscape of your business, seeing what key assets are at risk, what processes are there. And so you want to create that. It's also something you're going to, that'll help you get your proper cyber insurance, because you can be able to demonstrate to an insurance company that you're doing these things, or that you will be doing these things in short order. So what do you normally assess during a risk assessment? Well, first of all, you need to understand the people, the processes, and the tools. Everybody, you'll see a lot of IT companies out there that really brag on all their tools that they're using. Well, those are great. I'm not trying to put anything down. I use tools as well. The problem is, imagine, there's when you print silicon chips, there's a company called ASML. They sell machines, $200 million. They basically print on silicone wafers, very fine printing. We're talking the lengths of lines that are drawn that are basically the width of 5 strands of DNA. Incredibly sophisticated tool that's used to build out these microprocessors, these very grade A super processors that are used in only your finest electronics. Well, somebody gives you that $200 million machine, but they don't give you the way to operate it and the people that know what they're doing. That machine's a big boat anchor. And it's the same thing with the tools. If you don't have the people and the processes, it's obviously not going to work correctly. So first thing you want to know is you want to know what your people are doing. Are they going to be the cause of a theft? Are they going to be the people who are that the cyber criminals are going to be able to target easily, who can fall for every scam? Or are they going to be your first line of defense? Personally, I can tell, pretty quickly if a company is probably in the midst of a breach or will be, just simply by the fact if they train their people or not, because that's the first line. And most of the time really does have to be focused on training the people. The next part of it is the process. What's going to happen? We don't really say anymore, you'll never be breached. It's really a matter of if. It's no longer a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to get breached. So you need to have a process, just like you would have if you ran a school. You need to run fire drills. You need to be able to say, okay, we have a high possibility of getting a fire. We have a lot of people we're responsible for a lot of little lives. We need to make sure that they know where to go, where all the exits are. We need to do that. We need to train them to do that. And we'll run that a few times a year. Well, the same thing for a business. You need to know what's going to happen. It's really the difference between a business surviving a cyber attack or being closed. Because when things happen, they happen pretty quickly and in a panic. And if you don't have a plan of who do I need to report this to? Who do I need to notify? Who's going to handle what? You don't have those things in place. It's just going to be Keystone Cops. It's going to be pandemonium. And then obviously, you want to put the tools around to support the people and the processes correctly. So that's really why a risk assessment is so critical to a business. And if you haven't done a risk assessment within the last 6 months to a year, you owe it to yourself. We do these all the time. We do these around the country. We're glad to help you with them. They do take a little bit of time, but they're so valuable to a business to know where the holes are, because you can't protect what you don't know is basically being exposed. So who do we focus on? And why do I keep using the word we? Well, I have a team of over 200 fellow support companies around America and the UK. We do work on all types of companies, but these are the companies that we're currently focusing on, basically because we have what's called the FTC safeguard rules. They're coming into effect on June 9th. So if you're a financial firm, like an accountants, insurance companies, asset managers, M&As, if you're a law firm, real estate company, brokers, appraisers, lenders, car dealers, headhunters working in the financial services, M&A and asset managers, or any company that takes in credit applications, you're possibly going to be falling under these FTC safeguard rules. They come with pretty big fines. They start between $40,000 to $100,000 a day, depending on them. And on the most extreme cases, they actually can have jail time. We've seen up to 5 years. Now, the FTC is not going to knock on your door at the time, if that happens, they're not going to knock on your door saying, are you compliant? What they're going to do is when a breach happens, when the insurance company is triggered, when an investigation is triggered, they'll come in right after that. And that's when they start to levy the fines accordingly. We also look at, we also work with trust and estate attorneys and intellectual property attorneys, because again, what we're looking at is helping protect. We've been talking about the finance, the money part of it, but intellectual property is also a very critical thing that needs to be controlled and made sure that it's safe. So we're doing a webinar on Wednesday the 1st. Since I'm doing this as a recording, there will be a link down at the bottom here in the chat. We're going to focus on the compliances, the new compliances that are facing businesses, and everything that a business person must know to protect themselves and their business and their clients online. So love to have you there. That's 7things.A to Z Business IT. And again, I have the link down below. So I wanted to thank you for your time. And again, if you feel like, geez, I want to do a risk assessment right now, I don't want to wait till next week, I also put another link in below, which is called cw.A to Z Business IT, and that brings you right to my calendar. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. Take care.